Hey, you'll keep hearing me say it until this month is complete. October is the best sports month on the calendar. We've got the puck. NBA is just about back. So too is college football. College basketball, college football is here. Pro football is here. Fortunately, we are joined by a guy who can talk about just about all of it. I encourage you, nay, demand that you go and do exactly that. Check him out. Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, talking about Pitt football, Steelers football. He's the host of really an essential must-watch and or listen for self-proclaimed Steelers fans, Locked On Steelers. He does the podcasting. He co-hosts on WPXI Channel 11 in Pittsburgh. Skylights Friday night college football, still deeply important in southwestern Pennsylvania.
Very much.
He is Chris Carter. What's the poop, fella? Welcome to -3 at long last. It's been, it's been 3 long years I've been chasing you. Finally, we tracked you down.
It's about time you had me back on the show, Dave. Just want to say that I never got my call back to see if I could continue my reign of your quiz show that you had me on, because I beat Brian Batko and I was waiting for him to advance to the next round. So I'm pretty pumped about that. But I love talking ball with you, Dave. So I'm very happy to be here.
Well, first things first, that show was Mr. Lister, and that was a Spotify Live exclusive. Okay. But Eddie Spaghetti, make a note. This is in my head, but I'll surely forget it. So as soon as football season ends, Mr. Lister comes back on -3 as a special segment. We got to settle the hash. We had some real whizzes on there. Tim Benz was on as well.
Oh, yeah.
Here's something I want to do. Because you have a sunny disposition, relatively speaking, where Pittsburgh sports are concerned. Ben's skews more negative, and I've called him out on it. And then he gets upset with me about calling him out on it. And we go back and forth in front of the public on social media. So he skews negative, you skew positive. What about if we did a segment periodically where you are the angel and devil on my shoulder? You're trying to tell me the good news, and he's telling me that I'm getting over I think we should do that. So we'll try that. That's for the future. In the meantime, we have a lot to talk about and Chris Carter is one of the great X and O guys you can find on social media, telling you what's actually going down, who's at fault, who gets the credit for successful plays, failed plays, and otherwise, instead of all the pretentious people out there trying to do that. Looking up at YouTube TV in the 4 box and letting you know from his couch in Toledo, here's what I see. Listen to Chris Carter. He knows what he's doing. He's an actual expert on these things. So I want to get into you about what I'm seeing in football and check out, because there are some universal trends this football season. First things first, though, your name is Chris Carter. I'd like to properly introduce you to. We call him Eddie Spaghetti on the show, but his real name is Eddie Murphy.
Whoa, that's why he's Eddie Spaghetti.
Eddie Murphy, meet Chris Carter. What a weird thing. I wonder how many times this has happened. 2 people who have famous names, but aren't actually the person who most associate with that name meeting each other. Have a conversation between yourselves about how many times you've had dinner reservations and the maitre d' was disappointed to see you walk in instead of the Vikings Chris Carter or the comedian Eddie Murphy.
About a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now, I think it was 2 years ago, we're heading into the Steelers 2021 season, and Vikings Chris Carter is a sports panelist on Good Morning Football, and he says, Ben Roethlisberger stinks. He's done with. The Steelers need to ship him out of there. I'm tired of him. I got death threats in my DMs for that. How dare you disrespect me? I know where you live. And I was like, that's not me. Like it's not even close to y'all. If y'all saw him on television, you can see that we are different people. And so, I've gotten that a lot. Because there's other things he's said and done that have been different. One guy even accused me of having some substance abuse problems, and I was like, "Sir, no, this is the wrong person." And also,
I'm not the hot taker. I just think Dan Moore would serve well as a swing tackle. That's all. That's my hot take. Eddie Spaghetti, I've never asked you that. I've known you for 6-8 years now. I've never asked you. Have you ever walked in anywhere and been like, "What game you playing, kid?" You're not Eddie Murphy.
Not my dad had a lot more of those issues, especially because obviously he's older, and at the peak of Eddie Murphy, the comedian actor's powers were, in the Raw and Delirious and all the movies that ensued, whatever. So he had more of a rough go with it, with like either like car service or hotels for like business trip, whatever it was. And it was always like the like that sort of reaction from the staff. Me personally, I would just get like crushed with like jokes, and like football coaches back in the day would love to be like just throw out lines from Raw Delirious, and then kids would be like, oh, your name's Eddie Murphy, oh, this comedian Chris Rock is better, why's your name that? Like and then but like I realized as I got older, a little bit in the beginning of high school, but not really at all. I went to a nerd school, and then the minute I got to college, everyone was just like doing their own thing, their own life, no one cared. So I got lucky that I didn't really experience anything too bad about it. But I was friends with a kid in Boston University named Kevin Dillon, same name as the actor from Entourage. So we were friends. So I was happy to have another friend with a famous name. But yeah, those are my stories.
That's what your friend group is based around. We all have famous names. That's where we connected. There should be a show. There should be a debate show exclusively comprised of Chris Carters. I don't think a comedy show of Eddie Murphy and Eddie Murphy, I don't know if that would go as well. But Chris Carter and Chris Carter, I mean, who wouldn't watch that? And you know what?
I also wrote
Count me in for the Eddie Murphy and Eddie Murphy comedy hour, too. I'll watch that, too. Don't worry.
I also wrote the X-Files for people who forget that one.
Right. Yeah. All right. So you're I guess we can call you the third most famous Chris. That ain't bad.
Yeah, that's not bad. I'll take it.
And now to bring it full circle, since you're covering Pitt these days, I went to the Shoe in Columbus when John Kangemi had Ohio State on the ropes. Top 10 Ohio State, but Keith Byers, their Heisman candidate, was on the shelf with a broken foot. Still, Pitt was up 7-3. Mark Brasco missed 2 34-yard field goals in the game. The Pitt kicker at the time could have salted it away. They go down the field and score on a 3rd and goal, or maybe even a 4th and goal from the 1 on a little out to Chris Carter to win the game 10-7 in the last minute.
85?
Right around there. It was Mike Gottfried's first year, second year, something like. Oh, no. I'm sorry. It was the Foge. It was Fogerino's last year or two. As a matter of fact, we gave the late Foge's wife a ride from Pittsburgh to Columbus that day. We drove her out.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is weird. Anyway, okay, listen. Let's say this to wrap up the Pitt conversation. I've seen you getting a little loose. Pitt basketball, ready to roll. Little thin in the backcourt. Up front, ready to go. I saw you make your first Pitt tweet, and it was in honor of our guy. You're getting loose. I don't care about your character count on Twitter. You must do it. Don't call him Fede. Say it right or don't say it at all. Federico.
If I was sitting there in the peak watching practice and typing this out, and I'm like, Dave ain't gonna see this tweet. And then you did. He's all over it. I can't not tweet Federico.
You must always call him Federico.
All right. Fine.
Remember the Steelers turned down being called America's team and they gave it to the Cowboys?
Yeah.
Pitt basketball belongs to the world. It is the world's team. We have a representative from every corner of the big blue marble. I can't wait for this season. Let's talk some pro football though, shall we?
Sure.
We have you. This is one of your areas of expertise. And, I DM with you periodically to see if what I'm seeing, if an expert on your level sort of sees the same things. And here's my big takeaway after another, watching that Oregon-Washington shootout on Saturday and then some tepid pro football on Sunday. Should every NFL team and every college team that will be in need of a head coach be moving heaven and earth to try and get Huskies offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb? Because this, to me, is the takeaway. If you have, in 2023, a progressive young whiz calling your plays offensively, that is maybe more important than any position, including quarterback in the quarterback league. How say you?
I think that y'all be selling a narrative that would not be living up to the hype when you start looking at the actual things that make a good football team. Listen, having good play callers, which is what people are looking for, they're looking for the new innovative mind and everything. It is nice to have, but if you aren't also stacked with talent, it does not matter. I think that I've said this on Twitter the other day when I was talking with Josh Taylor of KDKA, but like I think that offensive play calling is the most overrated aspect of football right now. And it's particularly because I think people look at it and they say, oh, that was a smart design because it worked. But like, meanwhile, if there's 3 wide open wide receivers and the quarterback doesn't see any of them, even with a clean pocket, and then they get sacked or they throw an interception, that's a dumb play call. Why was that called? I don't understand. And it's like, yeah, because you're being a fan. You're just going off of success and failure overall with the play.
Okay, but wait. Let me
Sure.
jump in and say this.
Sure.
Yeah, pretty straightforward choices I'm about to give you here. Who's more essential in this gangbusters Dolphins offense, Mike McDaniel or Tua? Who's more important in what the Niners are doing offensively, Brock Purdy or Kyle Shanahan? Who's more important with what the Lions are doing in 2023 and in the second half last season, Jared Goff or Ben Johnson, their OC?
All right. I'll give you 3 answers here. For the Dolphins, it's Tyreek Hill. For the Niners, it's Christian McCaffrey. For the Lions, I will say Johnson's play calling is rather special. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown does a lot for that offense, but that is a very balanced offense. And I might even think that Johnson is the quote unquote best play caller right now as far as OCs. But again, that's such a back and forth thing. It's such a subjective thing that I think changes week by week just based off of how your players are executing. But like, for example, Kyle Shanahan, genius offensive mind, calls all the right plays, never makes mistakes. Christian McCaffrey comes out against the Browns, and then that offense looked putrid. And Brock Purdy looked very human all of a sudden. And not to say that they can't ever not look human, but I think that there are a lot of things that make some of these best offenses go. One thing I think you see across the board, those offensive lines do pretty well. Frank Ragnow leads the offensive line for the Lions.
I think maybe that is the answer.
Yes.
If it's not OC, and even in 23, look at what Josh Allen and that Bills offense are doing. What's the flaw there? They don't feel as sort of unstoppable, I guess. The Eagles in the same way, you see Jalen Hurts looking human, and maybe that's owed to a slightly diminished, especially when Lane Johnson sits down for them.
Right.
That line is probably a little less than where it was a year ago. I've believed that forever, that especially in this millennium, that, Jared Goff, like, why does he look good some years and other years he's thoroughly mediocre or worse? The quality of the offensive line. Give him an extra beat of protection, of a clean pocket. And most of those guys, 30 or 35 humans, can make a play if you keep them clean on the pro gridiron. That's right. But I still, here's a little bit more for you. Frank Reich, he's sort of in that in-between stage of like, is he a dinosaur? Here, you want a hot take? The game has passed everyone from the 20th century by, with the possible exception of Andy Reid. There's a hot take for you right there. How about this? Or maybe if not in Y2K, maybe it was when in the NFC title game, when the Rams and Saints were playing and that terrible PI wasn't called. Maybe that collision sort of like flipped the switch, and it rendered Sean Payton and everyone from the preceding era powerless to do anything against the new guard of Sean McVay and all of his young guns that have risen up underneath him. How about that theory?
Okay. Here's my theory to that.
Like a wrinkle in the space-time continuum, like everything.
That was the new Big Bang.
Now. Right, yeah.
I think it's certainly, there's certainly guys that are looking good right now. But I think you got to see how this stuff plays out, because this isn't the first time that we've talked about offensive geniuses being the new, like that. Like, you got to find the new offensive guru. That's been going on for, I want to say, like 15 years. Everyone's been trying to find the next guy. But let's go back over, like everyone's feeling good about Mike McCarthy and the Dolphins right now, and the Niners.
Mike McDaniel, but look at your Freudian slip. Mike McCarthy's another one who goes on the scrap heap with Sean
Mike
Payton.
McDaniel. Right.
By the way, don't let me forget. I also got to put Bill Belichick on there and maybe his guy, Josh McDaniels, too. But okay.
Yeah, right.
Oh, and Bill O'Brien, another dinosaur. If you're of a certain age, it might just be ageist of me. I like my contemporaries. The game has passed by. Your contemporaries own football in 2023.
But how about this? Let's just go over who's won the last several Super Bowls. Andy Reid, old guy. Sean McVay, young guy. Bruce Arians, old guy. Andy Reid, old guy. Bill Belichick, old guy. Doug Peterson, more of an older guy, not a younger guy. Okay. Bill Belichick, John Fox, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, John Harbaugh, Tom Coughlin, Mike McCarthy, Sean Payton, Mike Tomlin.
Oh, look who's showing off. He can count out Super Bowl champions backwards. Good for you.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You go, we're looking at these offensive minds. There's some guys that are doing some things well right now. But how long does this stuff pan out? Teams adjust to what you like to call. I think I look at those rosters and I say, man, they're doing something well with these offenses that are working right now. But Sean McVay, I'm very curious to see how the Rams go over the next few years, because they basically sold their souls in all their free agent money, and now they're in a position where once Matt Stafford's done, they're going to need to hit some serious gold in the NFL draft to be able to stay afloat. But when Stafford and Donald and those guys are gone, and Cooper, you might have Cooper Kupp around, but you might need to trade Cooper Kupp to get a serious high pick so you can try to rebuild your franchise. But I think it's one of those things where, there's a classic saying, it's the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. And the X's and O's are important. Like I think that's where people try to look at the game and say, oh, I want to come with this nuanced take that's, this play call was great. And look, there's some play calls that are great because they set guys up for favorable positions. But what is most important at the end of the day, and Chuck Noll said this, and I still think it rings true today, you can coach
with that name, but
yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I got it now. Okay, yeah.
But I thought you were joking. I apologize. But I was like, I'm not familiar with Chuck Noll. But my point is like Chuck Noll said years ago, he's like, listen, as coaches, we can put players in positions all they want. It's up to them to make the plays. And that's what it comes down to. You look at the situation that these teams have been in. Patrick Mahomes and that offense, they were unstoppable. They were the most unstoppable offense in the world when Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and that crew was all together. Now that Tyreek Hill's off of it, they're still good, but they're not nearly as unstoppable. Look at Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins. You put him on that offense with Jalen Waddle and that crew, and now they have all these fast running backs with a decent offensive line and a good quarterback in Tua. Yeah, Mike McDaniel's doing a heck of a job there. I think that there's a lot of that goes across the board that, yes, play callers deserve credit for success of their units, but failures. So I think some people reach too far into the bit of that's purely on the play call when it's like, man, this play failed because this guy didn't get his job done. But ultimately, it is a coach's job to get their guys to understand their roles and to help them execute better. So I say all that to say, I think, again, play calling is the most overrated aspect of what is deemed the biggest level of success in the NFL right now. And I think it's ever growing. It's always cool to be innovative, but a lot of people, Matt Canada in Pittsburgh right now, people deem him the worst offensive coordinator of all time. People call him, said he has a Saturday offense. Steve Smith said that, and a lot of people have repeated that since. Do people not know where Andy Reid's getting a lot of the wrinkles for his offense? It's from colleges on Saturday, because that's what a lot of this is happening is teams are having to find new things that other NFL teams haven't adjusted to yet. That's where a lot of this is coming from. That's where the NFL continues to turn things over, and the same plays are called all the time. Just in fact, Steelers fans were looking at two of the same plays called by two different teams, the Niners and the Lions, just the week before last, where it was a reverse pass tight end wheel route where it got Sam Laporta and George Kittle open down the sidelines for a big play. And one Steelers fan was like, Matt Canada would never call that play. And then the person who stitched it together said, actually, Matt Canada called this play a year ago against the Bengals. and technically was the first person that kind of ever called this concept that we can remember. So they might have actually stole it from him. And that's my whole thing, is that I don't think Matt Canada's biggest problem is play calling for the Steelers right now. I think Matt Canada's biggest problem is he doesn't know how to work with a young quarterback to get them to see the things that he wants them to see just yet. And that might change over time. But right now, I think that's their biggest struggle, at least in Pittsburgh. And I think that's the biggest thing across the board. It isn't necessarily the plays you call, it's getting your players to grasp the plays that you call so they can execute.
Here's my critique of Matt Canada, but I do want to get into this
Sure.
this town psychology, or I guess sociology of what's going on with the hatred of this poor offensive coordinator guy, the most famous or infamous offensive coordinator perhaps in the history of people. It's gotten so weird. It's bizarre stuff. But specific, here's my critique, given it to Carter, the man responsible for Carter's critiques, is that I do feel like when you go back and you look at it, and you're like, there's an open man there. A lot of those throws do ask a fair amount of the QB to see it, to divine pre-snap, I'm going here with the ball, or seeing his read and understanding that that's where the ball, and delivering that throw. What I mean is you see a lot of easy throws, like guys in wide open spaces running free, and you don't see that as much with the Steelers. I plainly see Pickett miss guys 10 yards in his line of sight directly over the offensive line in the middle of the field often. He very often misses those in-breaking routes, 15-yard ins to Pickens. So they're wide open, and he just doesn't pull the trigger for some reason when the ball hits his hands. It's a timing play where he hits his back foot, and he would theoretically drill the ball to 14 and move the sticks, and he misses those throws. But I do think Canada asks more of his young QB than some other OCs do. Is that fair, at least?
I think there's times that he does because he's not hitting the things that are over the middle. Like, for example, a lot of people in Pittsburgh were very upset about a 4th and 1 call where they didn't run the ball or do a quarterback sneak against the Texans late in that game, and they called a pass play. And why would you call a pass play? And they said that no one was even open, except when you went to the All-22, Connor Hayward was open 2 yards in front of the line of scrimmage for a first down, and would have gained a lot more than that. Calvin Austin was open in 2 seconds, a little bit further down the field on a post pattern. Najee Harris was open in the flat, would have gotten a first down easily if the ball had gotten there. And Kenny Pickett had time to see all of those. Instead, he ran outside of the pocket and got himself sacked in that play and got himself injured. And this is not to say Kenny Pickett's a bad quarterback. He's not playing well right now. I think he will shape out. I've covered Kenny Pickett all the way back through college. I think he's a heck of a player, but I think that you have to acknowledge that, hey, these are easier plays over the middle. There was a play, in fact, against the Ravens. I think it was a 3rd down that he got sacked on, maybe been a 2nd down, but there's a play where the thing that Pittsburgh often complains about on defense is, oh man, like why are our linebackers covering a wide receiver? And sometimes it's just that's what happens with alignment. Well, the Steelers got that on a big play where George Pickens was lined up against Patrick Queen. And right off the bat, I'm like, oh gosh, that should be a big play. Kenny Pickett doesn't even look his way. He holds onto the ball. He gets sacked. George Pickens was wide open in the middle part of the field after he just cooked the linebacker there. There are opportunities like that. Are they every play? No. But are they throughout the Steelers plays that can be converted? Yes. It is up to Matt Canada to get Kenny Pickett to see those moments and understand where they're going to come in his offense. That is where I think the real talent is of coordinators and coaches, is bridging that gap, making that connection happen, less so of just drawing those things up.
We see the Niners kicker, a rookie who was all world, gets drafted, all that, clutch as could be in college, misses it in the big spot against the Browns on Sunday. Is Kenny Pickett similarly in his own head at this point? Confidence is a thing. And I do think that Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and cats like that who understand I'm empowered on a level that even pro quarterbacks generally aren't. They have a swagger like I'm going to keep on shooting. Like there's nothing that can stop me. You can't spook me to hold on to the ball and not try and squeeze it in there. I think Kenny Pickett is susceptible to like, this isn't going so well and I'm letting everybody down. Do you get that sense?
I get the sense that Kenny Pickett is a winner And when he's not winning, he is only focused on trying to do that. And sometimes that can let the cart come before the horse in some of his plays. There's times I think he is trying to see something that isn't necessarily there instead of taking what is there. And I think that's where some of his biggest problems happen. And I'll point it out during Steelers games, and Steelers fans will get mad at me. They'll be like, you hate Kenny Pickett. Like, are you kidding me? Like, Kenny and I have a good relationship. Like, Kenny and I have done good interviews where he's given me great stuff on things where I wasn't even writing about him per se. So like, I look at that and I think like, man, like again, people just getting temperamental because their favorite player, their favorite team isn't doing well, but just being honest, evaluating and looking at it. I think Kenny, there's times he stares down his receivers too much, but that happens when you're a young quarterback still understanding how things work in your offense. I think what's going to determine if Kenny Pickett grows from that is if he keeps working at it like he does. And that's one thing the Steelers say his work ethic is not the issue in Pittsburgh right now. It's going to take him time to start putting it all together. Can he? I think he can. You look at the end of that Ravens game, things hadn't clicked all game. All of a sudden, Allen Robinson, George Pickens, and then George Pickens for a bomb. And he's able to move the sticks. He's able to make those big plays. And that's the second straight time he's played the Baltimore Ravens, a good defense, by the way, and led a last-minute touchdown drive to give the Steelers a late lead and a fourth quarter comeback win. He has that in him. He just has to make it more consistent. I've seen him make his play more consistent in college. If he could do that in the pros, that can be, when you could do it late, that shows me that there's a potential of you doing that in the pros. And if he does that in the pros, that can make the world of a difference.
Boy, I said it last week on this show, Clayton Kershaw famously underperforms based on the level of performance that he delivered through the majority of his regular season Hall of Fame career. Kenny Pickett is the weirdest of all things in this. We love to create the idea of guys being clutch, and clutch is in fact just maintaining your level when it gets hot. Kenny Pickett weirdly is better. I mean, in terms of numbers and otherwise. He outperforms his standard level when it gets hottest. And I don't know how much you can embrace that, because at this point it kind of feels anecdotal. Sample size is kind of small. But then on the other hand, how many times do we need to see it come out when he's put in that spot and he delivers? So I think that there is some cause for optimism on that count. I think that the Matt Canada reaction is weird in Pittsburgh. I've been talking about this for a few weeks now. I don't think there's ever been an offensive coordinator as talked about, not just in the city. I'm talking about nationally now. Everybody knows who the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers is. Very strange. And I think this comes from what I'm talking about. And I think you're to blame for it on some level. You put on social media your fancy X and O's and like, look, let me tell you who's to blame on why this play actually failed. And then you get other smarty pants like Alan Saunders on there or Caboli, and you guys all like, oh, no, you don't get football. I think it's available to everybody, the all 22. And there are a lot of these advanced analytics people who, I think another weird move is, as a side note, is when they show a great play call or a special play by a player and they do the thing where they pretend like they're sexually aroused by it. Like, oh my God, I'm drooling about that play call. Like, okay, chill out. Anyhow, I think everybody, the 21st century, everybody has to feel like they're an expert, because everybody's a narcissist. And so their opinion counts as much as everybody else's does. And they have to tell you what the score is. And just as my father and that generation would, the solution to everything was like, put in the backup QB. That's what everybody would want. Like Bradshaw don't got it no more. They got to put in Cliff Stott. Cliff Stott can do it, dude. I think if we give him a shot, they got to get Mark Malone out of there, dude. Scott Campbell's the man. Like, all right, the backup isn't the panacea that you think it is, everybody. But now everybody's thing is to just blame the coordinator, because there are a few clever play callers out there. We need one of those on our team. Does that stand to reason to you? Is that my hypothesis? Check out.
I agree, but I mean, I don't think that quarterback thing's gone away. I mean, did you hear the crowd chanting for Kenny Pickett's name after 4 games of Mitch Trubisky and Pitt? I cover Pitt football right now. They were chanting for Christian Veilleux after a game or two. And granted, Christian Veilleux just won his first start, so maybe they were right about that one. But that's still very much a thing. But especially with offensive coordinators, I mean, Pittsburgh offensive coordinator is one of the roughest jobs to have as far as getting critiqued in Pittsburgh. Bruce Arians was hated by the time that he ended his time in Pittsburgh.
I checked through some of those over the year. I went through in my head all the OCs I could summon and listed out about like 5 or 6 guys. And I viscerally remember that everybody hated him in Tan.
I mean, people said that his wide receiver screens were dumb. This was dumb. That was dumb. And it was just like,
people like Chan Gailey. People like Chan for a little bit. I don't even know if he was called, well, because was he calling the plays in 95 and 30? Was he the OC? I don't think he was. I think it was still Wiz at that point. Anyhow, but yes, the larger point is that everybody hates every offensive coordinator, I guess.
I think it was Earhart. Earhart did it.
Ron Earhart
in the Super Bowl 30 run, and then Gailey took over with the start of the Stewart era. Then there was Ray Sherman, Kevin Gilbride. Right.
Ray Sherman was one of the worst.
Yeah, Ray Sherman was pretty bad. Mike Mularkey, I thought, was pretty inventive back in the young days of Slash and Hines Ward, and then a little bit of Antoine Randall. You had 3 quarterbacks running the offense. But yeah, so Mike Mularkey. But I mean, you look at it, Bruce Arians, even though his offense was part of what helped Ben Roethlisberger start to come into himself a little bit, he was hated by the time he was there, and then he was ousted. And he was sent out. Todd Haley came in. People hated Todd Haley until the Killer Bees emerged. And truthfully, like, I remember people calling for Todd Haley's head, and then all of a sudden they realized, oh wait, just throw it to 84. That Antonio Brown guy is pretty good. Just hand it off to that Le'Veon Bell guy. He's pretty good. And then it was good from then on. But then by the end of it, people were like, this offense is not good enough. Let's let Ben call the plays, which is essentially what happened when Randy Fichtner took over. And then Randy Fichtner was hated, even though everyone acknowledged when Randy Fichtner was promoted from quarterback coach to coordinator, this was just Ben's offense. This is what Ben wanted to do. And
right. Once you reach QB emeritus status, then you just get to have a caddy.
Right.
Nate Hackett. What's he? He's the hacky movie quote guy from quoting movies from the last millennium, and Aaron Rodgers can't get enough of it. Beyond that, though, I don't know that he's actually doing anything to help the New York Jets along the way here. But yeah, I get that. But yes.
But think about this too, because for all the everyone's excited about Shanahan and McDaniel and that. Think of all the Cliff Kingsburys. Think of all the Nathaniel Hackett's and how he looked terrible in Denver. There's been so many of those coaches that they've tried and whiffed on that we just forget over the years. Josh McDaniels is another perfect example of that. How many times has he gotten a chance and just looked utterly miserable at being a head coach in the NFL? I think that you're right. This is just the thing that everyone thinks it's cool and suave and smart to yell about, because yelling at your quarterback, and it's easy to yell at those guys because you don't buy their jerseys. You don't get hyped when Mike Kenna doesn't throw the touchdown to George Pickens.
I think the other side of that coin is that it's unsatisfying on some level. It's cool, like. The thing that I always felt was vaguely soulless, if you're a Patriots fan of the 20-year dynasty, it was cool to root for Brady and everything else, but you didn't know if it was Brady because you knew the 6th-round pick. So he's not high pedigree, so he can't be it. It's got to be Belichick. He's the wizard who's making this all happen. And if that in fact was the case, it's like, yay, we coach good. That's not fun for a fan to root for or against. I don't think it's easy to say get rid of that guy, but it's also underwhelming for in the name of spirit and enthusiasm. Like, Mike McDaniels coaches better than your team does. Like, we want the stud. Like, everybody wants to cheer for Patrick Mahomes or the superhero players, not for the coaches. I've held you up way too long, and I had fun stuff I wanted to get to with you. I have to ask you this because I don't know when we're going to be kibitzing again, and it's while it's being recorded. The other side of the coaching coin, here in the 3rd century of the 21st millennium. My issue with Mike Tomlin, as I jump into complaining about coaching, here's my issue. The jive about they should get him. Tomlin, he's a bomb, dude. They don't win no playoff games or nothing, failing to understand the context of where the Steelers were starting. If you start the clock when Roethlisberger hurts his elbow to now, like that, you have to understand where the franchise is. And the fact that they never had a losing record amidst all that, made the playoffs in Roethlisberger's last season. Those are achievements that stand out, and everything doesn't have to feel like the great success if it doesn't end in a Lombardi. Those were successful years given the context of where the team was. That said, this is the year where I put my foot down in my brain and set it into a microphone too. This is the year where the team gets ripe. They don't have to go to the Super Bowl. This is a loaded up AFC, but they do need to get to 10, 11, 12 wins and show and feel like a team that over the next 3 years, which is the sweet spot, Pickett on his rookie deal and all that. This is the Steelers must cash in. And I don't know what that even means. Does it mean that it has to end in Lombardi? I don't know about that, but they have to play on a different level. And as it is still, and the Ravens game being the most recent, and I loved it. And I loved when the Steelers made that playoff run with Roethlisberger beating every team 12-11 week after week in a sport that now everybody who's good scores 28 or more on average, that the Steelers can turn you into a knuckleball, every game into a knuckleball type of game. But is it ultimately a winning method to play that tight, to not have your foot on the gas in game, in short yardage situations, in favor of turning it over to the D to get a big stop? Don't you have to, on some level, be a little more aggressive than he, it seems, is philosophically inclined to be?
I think there's times to be aggressive, and Mike Tomlin used to be aggressive when he had the offense to be aggressive with. People forget he was the one that mainly pushed the competition committee to say, hey, let's make this 2-point conversion rule a little bit simpler, that you got to kick from a little further out to encourage people to want to go for 2-point conversions, because the Steelers used to go for 2-point conversions all the time. When he had Ben Roethlisberger and Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown and that top 5 offensive line, they were going for it a lot more. They were being more aggressive. But when you don't have the guys, you don't do that. You just
but he's overcorrecting though. And even in the, last year in the first half of the season, there were moments where it's like, you can't rely on the defense without TJ Watt. And yet he was still trying to do exactly that. It's like, you must get more aggressive in this game. There isn't a ton of evidence existing now that you are going to be able to, that you're going to be able to win 2 or more likely 3 postseason games against good teams playing it nip and tuck like that. 1-score games week after week, you're going to get got somewhere along the way.
Oh, no, I agree. The Steelers need to be able to win by more. And there's times I think Mike Tomlin could be more aggressive at right now. But I think that there's also a reasonable look at, what's your personnel right now? Are you going to win with the defense? And yes, early on last year when it was TJ Watt, sure, that was when TJ Watt was out, there were times that maybe you could have taken a few more risks. But since then, what was their record last year with TJ Watt? What was it? 7-2? They were pretty good when he was on the field.
Okay,
and that was because they were leaning into that conservative style of play, because
I think week 1 showed you the formula. And when you saw Tomlin, this is way back to week 1 in 2022, when he's in the locker room post game, he was like, this is how we're going to undo the NFL, what everyone else in the NFL wants to do. What you just saw us do to Joe Burrow and company, we're coming for you next. And then TJ Watt is done, and like the whole thing got scuttled. Right. I just don't know if it's sustainable.
I think that it's again, it's part of where like you said, where the Steelers are at. You go back, like people have to talk about that playoff drought. The Steelers had 15 straight drives where they had the ball where either they were down by a possession or tied against opponents in the playoffs during that stretch of non-playoff winningness, where 15 straight drives where they didn't get a single point. And that was with Ben Roethlisberger. That was with aggressively going for it on 4th downs. That was that came down to quarterback play not executing what was there, and there were plenty of opportunities there. Their last playoff win was when Le'Veon Bell rushed for over 200 yards, and Ben Roethlisberger didn't turn it into a single touchdown. They had to win by field goals and great defense. I think Mike Tomlin is getting the Steelers through this era now, where they have to completely rebuild the offensive line. You see them working on that. It's getting a little bit better. It's taking its time, just like it always always does, just like it did in the early 2010s when they got Pouncey and DeCastro and Gilbert, and then Foster was able to build in with Villanueva and that crew. That took time to build, just like they're doing right now with Seumalo, with Broderick Jones, with James Daniels. They're trying to build something there. I bet you that they draft a high for offensive lineman the next draft or so. Kenny Pickett's a young quarterback. They've got a lot of young playmakers on the offense. I think this offense is finding itself, but the only way that they're going to be able to win while they're finding themselves, if they don't make a lot of big plays, they got to trust their defense is going to be the key playmakers. And they have been. I think the Steelers have won more games than any team in the NFL when holding a team by holding a team to less than 20 points in a game. And yes, that can't be counted on to take you to a Super Bowl down the line. But while your offense isn't clicking, that's how you're going to have to win right now. And I think that's all Mike Tomlin is getting them through is this era. Do they need to find the answers on offense? Absolutely. And I'm of the opinion if like this year, like you said, this needs to be the year where they find the foundation to step forward with Kenny Pickett, with this offense. And if they don't, they need to start looking for other answers. And I think after this year, let's say they miss the playoffs again this year. This will be the second year in a row they missed the playoffs. This would when I would start to be, if I'm the Roonies, being like, all right, can Mike Tomlin lead us to that promised land still? Or do we need to have this conversation after another year? I wouldn't fire him after this year if it doesn't happen. But I would look at the situation and say, okay, what's happening? Because this is the first year that I've been like, hey, you know what? This was here schematically, and the Steelers needed to be prepared for these things, and they weren't.
I agree.
Again, rebuilding processes, they naturally happen. They challenge you all the time. They challenge you to kind of build through it. Bill Cowher went through them and was terrible. And, you know, when they went 6-10, 7-9, they had multiple losing seasons. Three of the three losing seasons in that span. It took them time to get to where they were. I think Mike Tomlin, you see the great coaching come into play where they don't get to 6-10 and 7-9. They stay above that. But when they get the guys, that's what they have to do, is see if they can get the guys who can come together, create that offense. So now you are scoring 24, 27, 30 points in games while the defense is also playing at that great level. If you get that, then you are among the best in the NFL, and maybe even better than some of the offenses that are the teams that are just offenses turning it up and down all game long. I think that is what the future of the Steelers envision, is having that great defense with finally an efficient offense.
I think you
got to get there first.
I hear you. I mean, I said it in front of August, and I can't believe so many people, including media members, were seduced by what they saw in August. Who cares what the Steelers offense did in August? I was confident that the team was ready to roll and really push teams around this year. And maybe I got over my skis and thought they were going to arrive in week 1 or week 2. Maybe the spin on this, the optimistic spin, is that they have played look at the defenses they've gone up against so far. I mean, the Texans with the Miko Ryans doing some special stuff down there. You can make some excuses that gets them off the hook for the early season performance. They are 3-2. They're 2-0 in division. I think there is a chance, but I am fascinated to see what happens between now and that last trio of games that'll be really rugged. Bengals in Pittsburgh, at Seattle, and then at Baltimore. So they really got to make some hay if they want to be a playoff team and they want to progress. I just thought they would arrive a little sooner. And so I think people are vexed. I'm speaking for a lot of people who are hand-wringing about this, because 3-2 is fine. It's pretty good. If you look at the standings, they're in fine shape. It's just not where people anticipated them being. Okay. I'm going to let you go. 2 fast questions though.
Okay.
Offensive coordinator of the Steelers in 2024.
Man, that could be a whole lot of people. It won't, if the Steelers offense is not ranked at least 14th in the NFL, it won't be Matt Canada. And right now they're ranked like 30th. So there's that.
1, 2. I told you I was going to ask you this. Michael Caine retired formally over the weekend. Eddie Spaghetti, I need your thoughts on this too. You can have one career. And also, I guess it's the same question. Yeah, it's not your career, because then that involves like where the movies were shot. Whose movies? You can only watch one guy's movies for the rest of your life, and you can never see the other guy's movies ever again. Michael Caine or Gene Hackman? Gene Hackman's 93 and also retired. The two greatest character actors of the last, half century? Whose career would you rather have? I'm going to let Spaghetti go first on this one.
Okay, Eddie,
hit a chance to think.
I would probably lean Michael Caine right now.
Because why? Give me your favorite Caine picture.
Oh, well, he's in most of Nolan's stuff, except for Oppenheimer was like really the first one, so that's a big one. And then obviously that includes the Batman films. So I think like Michael Caine was still peaking late in his career, where I feel like Gene Hackman hasn't really done much of anything for about.
I don't think he's made a movie in 20 years.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
literally he hasn't made a movie in 20 years.
Yeah, so I'm going Caine.
There was not a movie made from about the time I was like maybe 8 until I was maybe 48 that one of those two guys wasn't in one of the movie. Wasn't in that movie. There was not a movie made. Carter, how say you?
I think this is a landslide. It's Gene Hackman all day. Like let's start. Let's go movie for movie. You have the greatest car chase scene of all time in The French Connection. You never get to watch that again if you say bye Gene Hackman. Poseidon Adventure, classic disaster movie, one of the more classic ones ever. Titanic before Titanic, right? Young Frankenstein. I can't ever laugh at Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein ever again. You kidding me? I got to do that. The Superman movies. Yes, the Nolan movies are great, but you mean Gene Hackman is still the greatest Lex Luthor of all time. I mean, this is like all this collective intelligence, and you think they know how to operate a door. Like just the stuff like that he did. He was hilarious, but also maniacal as Lex Luthor in those movies.
Refused to shave his head.
Refused. Yeah, that was also pretty
famously
funny. Hoosiers. I think it's become overrated in its lore, but it's still a classic, great sports basketball movie,
right.
that people can leave on. Mississippi Burning, classic movie about racism in the South. Crimson Tide with Denzel Washington, just the banter back and forth between those. Exactly. That was amazing. Enemy of the State with Will Smith. I loved one of my favorite spy movies when it comes to that action. There's just movie after movie after movie.
Oh my God, Spaghetti! This is a landslide. When we promote this show, it should be Chris Carter and Eddie Murphy debate who had the better career. I mean, everybody's gonna have to see like who got Eddie Murphy together and Chris Carter together to have this debate. Landslide victory. I gotta say, Spaghetti, fair's fair. Roy, like the characters. First of
also
all,
the
downhill racer is a gem. Crimson Tide is a fun gem. You can never turn it off if you land on it. He played Royal Tannenbaum. Harry Zim from Get Shorty, one of his great
great character.
Little Bill in Unforgiven.
Look at me, Jimmy. Also, the Firm, his character with Tom Cruise. I love The Firm.
One of his great turns.
Senator
Bryce in No Way Out.
No Way Out. It's a great movie.
Yep.
I'm sorry. This is a lance. I love Michael Caine. Did great stuff. Loved him in Miss Congeniality, but he was always a B character.
The Reverend in Poseidon Adventure. He's a priest in a turtleneck saving lives. He saves Borgnine. What more do you want, Spaghetti?
You love the movie Children of Men, and Michael Caine's in that too. So you lose that movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Right. I guess they're both great. I guess that's the answer. Listen, this was great. Good times, Chris Carter. I wanted to do a what if, Spaghetti. I was going to do me and Carter. We're going to go back and forth on a Baker Mayfield what if. That would have been really fun to do, but we've gone on too long. So we're going to cut it off here. Chris Carter. Let's come back and do that one at a later date. What fun. Here we go. Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. You read his words. Locked On Steelers. You hear his words. And on Friday nights, along with Jenna Harner on WPXI 11, Skylights High School Football, you can watch his work. Oh, he's doing it all. He's making Pittsburgh sports scene that much better, bringing a little sunshine to some of the doom and gloom going on the banks of the Three Rivers. Let's do that angel and devil thing soon, eh?
Absolutely. It'll be a lot of fun.
There he goes, everybody. Chris Carter. Check him out.